We think it's the way to make better wine, ultimately.
That's not what you've been saying all night.
Yeah, of course it is. We think it's about our wines
That's
from...
honestly, Philip.
Our
You've been
wines from
talking
New
about
Zealand.
people's perceptions and 5 cheated cows and the blah, blah, blah. Suddenly you think it's the way to make better wine. Do you?
Because that's what our consumers want. Our consumers want better wine.
I'm sorry. I feel a marketing
know what
migraine
marketing's
come
like.
on. What do you think, Richard? No problem with coexisting, even though people are worried about pollination, people are worried about, I don't know, pollination. Is that what they're worried about? Is it possible to have GM and non-GM in one small economy such as New Zealand?
You're asking me?
Who am I asking?
Rob?
Well, I was going to ask Richard, but you can answer, Rob.
We'll both answer, go on. You start.
Well, I don't see why you can't have more than one tool in the toolbox. And I think there are many different approaches that you could take. And why wouldn't you explore all of them?
Because I think Christine might suggest...
Well, for instance, in Hawke's Bay, there's a group called Pure Hawke's Bay, and they're food growers, and they just commissioned a nationwide poll of 1,000 people, and they asked whether provinces should be allowed to, the regional council should be allowed to set rules saying where...
More stringent rules than the government.
The government's proposing to centralise all of this, and so the question was about should the regions be able to make the decision for themselves, and 83% of the respondents said they believe that remaining GM-free in food production is important for New Zealand's reputation. And so they don't believe that coexistence is possible, and they see it as a market risk, regardless of whether it's a ecological risk or they see it as an economic risk for them as pure food producers in Pure Hawke's Bay. The recent Environment Court decision around the Bay of Plenty, the regional council being able to set its rules on where things are grown or if they're grown at all, has reinforced that right that it should be. And John Bostock, who exports millions of dollars of organic apples out of Hawke's Bay, says he doesn't want regulators in Wellington telling him what market risks he should be taking. It's a risk to his business.
It's interesting listening to both you and Philip. Philip begins and ends with the market. What people want is what people should get. But you don't really believe that, Christine, do you? You don't believe that what people want is what people should get.
Well, I think there's several things. There's several.
You're using that argument to support your core belief. And your core belief, regardless of markets, regardless of, gobbling up the taxpayers' money, your core belief is that genetic modification is wrong.
No, I believe it's ecologically dangerous. It's too risky.
And it's too risky on the basis of what evidence so far?
Well, just gave you the evidence about weed resistance to the herbicides and the dangers of the herbicides.
Yeah, but how widespread
themselves.
is that really?
Well, 62 million acres in America at the moment. So,
Because you see, it may be, everything's a trade-off. We might be able to deal with the resistant weeds at the same time as getting more yield from the crops. Do you know what I mean? There are always unintended consequences.
Yeah. I tell you what, Kim, it's not that I believe what's wrong, it's that I am using a system now of growing my food that works.
Yeah, but you're not going to see
really
the world
good
with your garden, Christine.
No, but if everybody had a garden, problem solved.
Oh, please. If everybody had a garden, problem solved.
True. Most of the world's food is grown in a garden, not in this broad acre agriculture that is incredibly energy inefficient in the US is an aberration in world terms. And it's going to cause the collapse of American civilization, if that's not a contradiction in terms.
I do understand the point you're making. I would like to point out that it is physically impossible for everybody to have a garden. But I think the point that Christine is raising is the threat of
Just the size of
monoculture, is the threat that you find the fabulous GM crop and you plant it everywhere with inevitable consequences of loss of diversity and catastrophic disease. Any comment to make on that?
It bothers me too, and it's part of this multinational companies dominating the crops. And the reason they dominate the crops is they're the only ones that can afford to put things through the deregulation. And if we...
That sounds like a good time.
Madam, you get the first question. If you put a question mark on the end of that statement, you get a right to stand up and talking into a microphone. Go ahead. Take it. What are the other reasons? Where's she gone?
Can I just make a point first? I mean, I think that the point
You
is...
can. Give that microphone to the woman in the striped cardigan, please.
I mean, we have the monoculture problem without invoking GM, I mean, as well. So, you know, it's not, I mean, we've got that issue, you know, with conventionally bred cultivars with monocultures, and, you know, we're all learning about that now. We saw that in the outbreak of PSA and kiwi fruit. I mean, that partly was due to the fact that it was not a monoculture, but a duoculture, if you like, in kiwi fruit. So that's nothing to do with GM or GE per se.
But I do think it's exaggerated with the GM thing. I'm just thinking of soya beans now. We're now down to a global soya bean crop of only about 4 or 5 cultivars.
Which is a dangerous thing.
It's a dangerous thing.
If you
agreed.
care
Yeah.
about soybeans. I just want to, and I do. I just want to run a kind of a, before you get to ask your question, which you may still be evolving, I'm sorry, it was to seize upon your ejaculation in that fashion. I just want to put a sort of philosophical question to you about genetic modification. I'll put it to each of you. Genetic modification, it is said, is another technological fix to circumvent the last round of technological fixes. And we're talking about the Green Revolution. We're talking about the great, you know, hooray of food for everybody. It didn't go right, so we went back to the lab and we came out with another technological fix. That's another reason why people distrust it. Your comment, please, Richard.
Humanity's been doing that from day one, I would have thought. I mean, for every problem we solve, we create 5 new problems, which we then go out and fix those problems. And I mean, ideally, we'd like to sit down with a bit of blank paper and design utopia, but that's not the way that the world works.
But the thing about GMOs is you can't shove them back in the bottle. Once they get out there, they're out there. Once we have them forever.
You can say that about the car, about everything that we let out of the bottle.
Rob,
Well, it may be a technological fix for a previous technological fix, but it still needs fixing. And technology is the way we fix things.
Tony,
I think it's about how we adopt and use the crops. I mean, the BT in maize has been very successful because it's been managed appropriately. The herbicide resistance has not been managed well and it's led to problems. And it's about how we deploy the technology we've got to consider.
Philip,
No.
he's relying on me not being able to remember the question. Christine.
I'm reminded of a postcard I saw in Germany, which was a bunch of raggedy kids, and they're going like, teachers are the people who help us solve the problems we wouldn't have without them. and I rather think that chemical companies that turn themselves into genetically engineered seed companies are companies that help us solve the problems we would not have without them.
It's true, Dow Chemicals is a bit sus, isn't it? John?
I think you just defined the human condition. We like to expand and grow and fill the environment up with our toys and junk. Some technologies like GM obviously attract a lot more attention than others. I mean, there seems to be this blithe acceptance of this Facebook thing you talked about. I'm not a part of it. But is that another evil that we've inflicted upon society? I don't know. GM seems to have got undue attention, possibly because we all do feel rather attached to our dinner plates and what we eat, and more so than what appears on a computer screen. But is it any less dangerous to us?
It's a matter of choice, isn't it? Woman with the microphone, sorry.
Carry on.